I'm Terrence James.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're doing our traffic light Grand Prix acceleration test where we race up to the fake stoplight as fast as we can to the speed limit just to hammer on the brakes in the brand new 2023 Honda, what is this thing again?
Civic Type R.
Oh yeah, manual. All right, we are our own launch control.
Save the manuals.
Save the manuals. I save you. Hold on, here we go. All right, hold on. Oh, mommy seatbelt. ABS. Fast. It obviously puts its power down well with its helical style, limited slip differential, and the Brembo brakes up front are smooth and controlled. So we are going to take this for a full drive and tell you why, after living with this thing for a week, why we would recommend this as the most fun daily driver you could possibly find outside of somewhere where there's this deep of snow. Okay, here we go. Okay, Chris, we're off on the twisty bits. So let's talk about how this thing feels for an enthusiast vehicle. So we've got a couple corners coming up here. One of the things that I like when I had the Acura Type S, which I'm going to drive you around and to get a chance to drive yourself, is that helical style limited slip differential. So front wheel drive car or not, when it's dry out, it responds amazing. Let's just go a couple of these corners fairly quickly here. It's very confidence inspiring. Really, really flat. I actually have this in sport mode, which is default. Put that into comfort here. And even in comfort, see, my Golf R Mark 8 has the, what is that, Nuremberg mode, which basically is what everyone's individual mode used to be. Crank up everything to super high, except make the suspension a little bit softer so it doesn't rattle your teeth. So that's essentially comfort mode in this is not too bad. But let's put it, because this is the sporty segment, let's put this in, R button. It's got an R button here. All right. So this is going to firm everything up. And this is going to be one stiffer than the Type S.
Right.
Just so you know. So even right now, I don't find it too bad.
So hold on to your fillings.
Yeah, so hold on. But even though this is a back road, pretty bumpy, it's not too bad. But we got another corner here. So let's see if it stays even a little bit more flat around this corner now that we got it in the stiffer suspension. Like, that's a tight corner. Look at that. So it sounds good.
I mean, that has to be the closest thing that I've ever felt to a Porsche 911 with front wheel drive.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that. I've heard so many reviewers when I was preparing for this, and of course it's one of my favorite cars of all time, so I'm watching those videos anyway. But I've heard so many reviewers that I really respect say that this car here is essentially a front wheel drive Porsche, and that's meant to be a compliment, even though one's a Japanese company and one's a German. But I think even Honda folks would appreciate that compliment to know that not only just a Porsche too, but I've heard people say that this would be like a GT3. If Porsche made a GT3 front-wheel drive car, this would be it.
Yeah, I completely agree. It feels that's exactly how this thing feels. I mean, it's not really a surprise. That's what Honda's been doing for years. They've mastered front-wheel drive. This is the ultimate of what front-wheel drive can do. Honda's basically said so themselves. Like, to feel the way that this drives, if you were to tell me that this thing had double wishbone suspension in it, I would believe you. Even though it's McPherson strut front suspension, just like all the other Hondas. There's just something that they've done that...
Yeah, there's a few adjustments there that they've made compared to the SI to help reduce torque steer and some of that wheel hop. Now you're still going to get a little bit of that. You know, we saw a little bit of that in our acceleration, but especially going around the corners, how balanced and flat. Like, you and me were discussing this with the Acura when we were returning it to pick up this car, and I was saying that this feels more like my BRZ, and that's again meant to be a compliment in the sense of I feel like I'm part of the car. So yeah. Like, I got a brand new Golf R, which you've been in, and it's a wonderful car, super fast, you know, competition with this, but I feel like I'm somehow I'm in a ball in a box on top of a wagon or something. Like, I'm part of the ride, but I'm moving all around and I can't really tell what's happening underneath me. I feel like I'm bolted right in to this chassis. The seating position is absolutely incredible. Like, I'm low, not as low ironically as the Acura. That one I thought sit a little bit lower. And I think it's just because these seats angle a bit more like this.
I think so. No offense to your Golf R, but in comparison to your Golf R, this makes your Golf R feel like a CUV.
It really does. Yeah, yeah, in every aspect.
This feels like a sports car. Even the way you get in, even when I get into this car, it feels the same as when I got into 911 GT3. The way the seats are bolstered and the way they hug you and everything. This is the 911 GT3 of front wheel drive cars.
It is. You can see that level of detail is here. Like whether it's the red carpets that people like or don't like, it's special and it's a throwback to the old ones, you know. And these seats, you're 100% right. Like they're super comfortable, even though they don't look like they would be, because a lot of these sport buckets, like deep sport buckets like these, aren't. But this is super comfortable, and they hold you and they look good. Like this. Like I said, they just nailed it with this.
Yeah.
And one thing that we said, though, with the Acura, it's because they market it only in North America and different regulations, they can have a louder, poppier front exhaust, where you can't do that with this. But you were saying, and I think probably we picked it up in the audio of the launch, that it sounds, you were saying, a lot better on the outside, like when it drives by.
Yeah, from the outside you do get a little bit of that growling and popping from the exhaust, the way we did with the Acura. I don't know what it is about being inside the car that's muted that. I think I have a feeling, I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling there must be some sort of pumped in audio here, because because it's sounding like right there when you do the downshift, it's sounding like
because watch, I'm going to put it in comfort. Watch.
Yeah,
it's there, but it's muted.
Yeah,
it's way different, isn't it?
It's like they're forcing some of that intake sound into the vehicle to remind you of those old school VTEC Hondas,
right?
Like the K20 and the 8th Gen SI and stuff like that. But I think it's kind of missing the mark a bit, because it's almost sounding a little bit fake. Kind of reminds me of my Ford Focus with its what do they call it? Sound Composer, I think is what it was called.
Yeah. I mean, they're all doing it, but it drives me nuts because it's not authentic, the sound.
Yeah.
And what I found with the new BRZ GR86 and this isn't as bad as those two cars, but because like you said, they want to kind of like highlight the fact, especially when you're in the sportiest mode, that you're being extra sporty. But the problem is the noise is, I think, probably a few octaves higher than it really needs to be. It's just too much, you know. And I really wish that you could throttle some of that back, pardon my pun, but I don't believe you can. But one thing that you can do, the car has to be completely shut off, but I did realize through the infotainment you can shut off the rev matching if you want to do it yourself, and these pedals are pretty nicely spaced. I can do it even there. So just a second here, let's try that VTEC out. So 6,000 there, yeah, that lasts about 1,000 RPM. You can feel something kind of not quite like the old days, but it's kind of, I don't know,
it's not anywhere near as aggressive.
Well, you actually have a VTEC, yes.
Yeah, my 2014 Civic has the 1.8 liter, so it has the fuel economy VTEC, and it has a very aggressive crossover at 4,500. You can really tell that that's where things have opened up. The VTEC's there, but it's a lot more muted here.
Yeah, 100%. But you know, to be fair, you know what the VTEC was trying to accomplish was a high-end turbo, in the sense of you get that thrust kind of in the top end, where, you know, to be fair, it doesn't have the same noise for sure, but the fact that you got really such a linear power line with this, because the turbo kicks in fairly early, and then you get that extra power through the VTEC and everything, so it really is a ton of power. Wish it sounded a little bit better, but all in all, I have to say that it's definitely nailed the mark as far as the enthusiast vehicle goes. Now, that leads me into kind of the second half is, you know, someone like me anyway, I could probably maybe swing, because I got a Golf R, I could maybe, you know, sell a kidney and, you know, not eat 3 meals a day, and I could maybe figure out how to buy this thing. However, I don't know if it is my dedicated vehicle, because I'm married and have a family, how realistic it is, because this is very bumpy. Now in the sport mode or the comfort, it is a lot better. But I noticed the other day when I had the Acura version, I had a pop in here, and it was open, and the thing's splashing all over because you're just bouncing up and down. So there's like little sacrifices that you'd have to make with this. And the same with the cup holders. It's got tons of cup holders. It's a Civic, but for whatever reason, it can't hold the taller, skinnier things like a lot of the water bottles or the Bubbas or some of these things. So again, you're a little bit limited on a practical side there. And again, I'm being picky, but that's what this segment is for. And just so people know if they are buying something like this, just to know that. So now the other thing too is and here's a good example, is we're on gravel. So this is amazing because it's barely over 3,000 pounds and it's a large car. It's like almost as big as my uncle's Ford 500 was. And the fact that this is around 3,000 pounds is great, but they've taken some sound deadening and things like that out. So that's another thing. Like when you're on the highway, and you were even mentioning with these big 265 width tires and stuff,
they pick everything up and they fling it around inside the wheel well, and you hear all that. And that was one thing with the Acura too. The Acura has, I think, that little bit of extra sound deadening, so you don't quite get that, despite the fact that the tires are just as wide. They pick up just as much stuff as these tires would. You've got that extra level of sound deadening. So I think, like when you're talking about daily driver and having to live with it every single day, yes, there's some sacrifices you'd have to make in the Acura as well in order to have the level of performance that the vehicle is capable of achieving. But I think the Acura is probably, like you said, this Plus R mode is the Acura dialed up one. But I think the comfort mode here is not quite as soft and cushy as the comfort mode in the Acura was either.
No. Now, one of the other things, like we were mentioning, is they look very similar from a side profile, but you straightened me out, thankfully, is talking about how that one has the sport back, the Acura. This is more of a true hatch. They look very similar, but that having this true hatch here gives you an extra inch or two in the top, and I was quite surprised. I'm only 5'7" in that Acura, sitting in those back seats. I was not comfortable as an adult. Leg room totally, but here, just that extra, because you're 5'10", 5'11", and you can fit, and you are more like I was in the other car, but you're more of a normal height. Part Smurf.
Yeah, I've got a couple of inches of spare headroom in the back seat of this car, whereas in the Integra I almost had to sit like this. I couldn't quite sit up straight without my head touching the roof, so if I didn't want to touch the roof, I've got to sit sideways like this. So you do, that is one, there's positives and negatives to both. The more upright greenhouse in this car does give you that extra headroom that the Acura loses, and you do get a little bit of extra cargo space too. I think this is probably, it's got to be so close to a CRV that...
Yeah, well, I had to park beside the RDX because we did that for Honda first, and from the naked eye, aside from being a couple inches higher, they were so close. This has about 25 cubic feet worth of space in that trunk, and the RDX was 30. So technically that's a big difference, but not really. Like when you just look at them, because realistically what I'm saying is, if you really do want a fun vehicle and you don't need the all-wheel drive and things like that in the RDX, or that extra couple inches of ride height, realistically, whatever you could stick in the RDX, you're going to be able to stick in here. What I mean is, if you do one stroller and some grocery bags, you're still only going to be able to do one stroller and some grocery bags in the other. It's not going to, like, you're going to fit two strollers all of a sudden.
Right.
So for me, that's why I've always liked these hot hatches, or whatever you want to call them, even if it's an SI like a sedan or the WRX. Basically a very practical, fun vehicle because of all the different practicality you are getting. But one of the things I was surprised though, and again, just picking on this, is that for whatever reason in the base Integra, the base Civic, they have the 3 seats in the back, but for whatever reason they've eliminated it and just used 2. And I don't really know what the reasoning is for that. I don't know how much cost cutting, because they had cup holders anyway, and instead of having them in the armrest, they've now put them down on the bench, so you couldn't have someone sit there. But I was thinking, even cars like this, really, and even ones like my Volkswagen, realistically, I don't put 5 people, because the one in the middle is gonna not like you, right. And you probably don't like them if you put them back there. But the point is, the option is there. But even if I don't, I have the like most cars in the normal Civic, you have the armrest. So even if it's just you and me back there, I don't know who's driving. But if it's the Honda Sensing, not recommended. recommended. It's
Yeah, don't do that.
but the idea is at least you could have the armrest. But I don't know. Again, you're not necessarily buying a vehicle like this because your primary focus is comfort and convenience. You just need things in a pinch. And that's when I had an SRT4, and that's what this reminds me of. What I wanted to mention to you is it's a modern version of my SRT, and that's going to make a lot of people upset, Honda people, because it's a stinky old Dodge that was, you know, probably broken when it came off the line, unlike these reliable Hondas. But what I mean is, it was a front-wheel drive monster with an LSD up front that it could take on anything and everything, and people were shocked every single time. And it was a ton of fun, and you could still, even though it was a compromise, you could still get away with it. And that's what this reminds me of, but way more refined.
I think we can credit the SRT4 for having these vehicles now today, because the SRT4 took that idea of the sport compact hot hatch type of vehicle and it elevated it to a level that the Type R that was available overseas at the time couldn't hold a candle to what the SRT4 was capable of. And I think it kind of lit today. Right. And I think it kind of set the hot hatch world on fire at the time.
Right, because again, like, this is going to be way nicer car, way more refined, but just from a strictly numbers perspective, as I just looked it up the other day just to make sure I wasn't crazy. I am crazy, but which is the SRT4 was 0-60 in the low fives, and that's through, like, you know, reputable magazines, and a quarter mile in the 13-second range, and about 155 mile an hour, and that's essentially the same numbers that this does. Now, the difference is this is a way bigger car, and even though we're picking on some of the compromises, it's nothing like the compromises of a Dodge SRT4.
Right.
Now, with that being so, let us lead to our final thoughts, where we'll go over some of the things that we like and don't like in the interior and exterior, and let you know whether or not we recommend buying this amazing front-wheel drive enthusiast vehicle. All right, final thoughts time, and apparently Chris gets sick from my driving and couldn't make it any further. Actually, we had to shoot this on a different day. So let's go. Let me tell you about some of the things that I really like and don't like so much after living with this thing for a week. So let's start off with the looks, because how can you not love the looks of this thing, especially after the improvements, for many people's opinion, from the FK8 or the previous one, the 10th generation, were just a little bit too boy racery, because this to me looks more like an Alfa Romeo or something like that if you're not into cars, with all the shiny bits on it, the size of it, how low and wide it is. It definitely looks the part. Now, does it sound the part though? Look at these three exhausts. Let's listen. If you're into sewing machines, maybe. That's disappointing, especially compared to the Acura. Let's listen to the Acura. All right, we got to change those regulations. Anyway, yes, so I really like the look. I like that they still have a big spoiler, but it is a little bit classier than the other one. You've got this side skirting on here, which I really love. They've kept a functional vent. They've lowered the wheel size, so it still looks good, but a little bit better performance for day-to-day. Not going to rattle your teeth as much. Love the hood vent to release the, you know, the just fire from the nostrils of this 2-liter turbo. That's all I could come up with on the spot. I got to go back to my night courses for creative writing. But of course, you got the red Type R badge, legendary, big open front. Everything on this car is functional. But one of the things I really like too is just all the little details. Like here, the nose comes to a point, kind of like their F1 cars and things like that. Inspiration from F1, I should say. And then you got this wide body, and compared to the Acura, where they kind of took Dodge's approach and just slapped some plastic wheel bells on there, these are actually different bodywork. So I really appreciate that effort, and it looks really awesome. If you come here, like, look at this. That is just so impressive. So that is the things that we like. But kind of what I don't like is the fact that it is a really big car nowadays. So when we come around here, you're looking almost like my uncle's old Ford 500, which about 10 years ago or so was one of Ford's biggest cars. Now, with that being so, though, it does afford you a little bit more space, which is one of the things that I do like. So even though I thought that this door would open up a little bit further, being a Honda, it's still plenty of room to get your Moose Baby seats in there. As you can see, tons and tons of space. But what about me and people? Well, fall right in here. Yes, now I'm 5'7", 150 pounds, 5'9" with my spiky hair, and you wouldn't want to be much taller because your head would be hitting. Now, one of the other things that I found surprising is there's not a lot going on for people back here. hello, no vents, I can't breathe, and nothing to plug in, so I'm really bored, nothing to put my phone on in the back. And my cup holder is here instead of where my little buddy could sit, because it's only 4 seats and there's no armrest. So, you know, very, very surprising. But the visibility for the kids or adults isn't too bad back here, as you can see, so hopefully, you know, they wouldn't get too barfy or whatnot. So let's go up front, because that's all that really matters, because you're driving. All right, so let's come up here, because there is a lot to love up here. Not so much to hate. Ooh, well, these red carpets, I love them, but as you can see, this press car has been rode hard and put away very wet after about 20 some odd thousand kilometers, probably like 100,000 normal everyday kilometers. And these red carpets are kind of looking a little rough. But these seats, love them, love them, love them. Except when you sit in them, they are very snug. And again, I'm a thin person, so even I was thinking if I had thicker clothes on in the winter and had to get in and out of this a lot, it would be questionable. Yes, to say that for sure. Now, what else I like up here is these seats obviously are awesome, but they're not heated, not power. I can get away with the not power part, but the heated would be nice. The same with the steering wheel, especially because a lot of these sold are in upper U.S. and Canada, where it does get a little cold, but you'll be racing around and it'll be hot. And the seating position is hot. It is like a Mazda Miata or something, especially for a car like this, and I really do appreciate it. And of course, there it is. Hello, that 6-speed manual. You don't get better than that. It's a Honda. Everything is easy to get to. They've kept a hard button up here, which I appreciate. Hard buttons for your climate. It really looks good. I don't think it's going to date. And it's just really easy to live with. Surprisingly, the cup holders I thought would be a little bit bigger, but there's definitely enough of them in here and things like that. So that leads me to my actual final thoughts, which is if you were in the market and you can afford an enthusiast vehicle that's between $50,000 and $70,000 Canadian, and you don't need all-wheel drive, I think this is one of the best that you could possibly get. It's numbered, it should hold its value well. It's a Honda, so it should last a long time and not give you a lot of headaches unless you're pretty rough on it. And even after, like I said, 25,000 kilometers on this thing of press car kilometers, that's a lot of track driving and things like that. It drives really, really well still. So yeah, I'd have to say, with that being so and all the practicality and everything else, there's not a lot of compromise in this car. But that is one of the things that I would say. It was a little too everyday Civic for me, in the sense of it's a little too quiet and a little too comfortable compared to that Acura. But all in all, I don't think you'd be disappointed, especially if you love Hondas and the history behind it. Now, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and check out that Acura video, because it really does help, and we really do enjoy doing this and like to do it further. So thanks for watching, and we will see you again next time.